Hey classes, welcome back. I'm going to do a very quick recap today, go along with your 4-day weekend, but I will try and also do a write-up of everything that you're about to see. First of all, very quickly, The Biggest Little Farm. We didn't watch all of it, but I can't say enough good things about using this movie to talk about the microorganisms that they bring back to the soil here. Also, when you're talking about ecosystems, John and Molly quickly realized that the coyote and unfortunately, they do kill a coyote during this movie, but the coyote are actually helping control the gophers, the pests, if you will. And when we compared it to our own field, I'm pointing right outside the door here, for example, the gophers outside are actually doing something beneficial. You know, they do turn over the soil. But again, when you have an ecosystem that's out of balance, much like we have here in the school, there's no natural predators for them out there. Coyotes certainly can't make it onto this campus. There are some hawks that come by, but if they wanted to control the coyote better, or the gophers better, we would probably put in some owl boxes around here. That's one of the things they show in the movie. In other words, when an ecosystem gets out of balance, how easy it is for one particular species to sort of overpopulate. We have an example of that right here in just a second of a local species that you see all over the place. It is an introduced species. Of the species that we've had so far, it is the very first one that is what we call an invasive species. Now, they are a beautiful bird, and sometimes they get confused for the brewer's blackbird, which we already saw here. But this particular bird, the European starling, was introduced about a century ago in New York. Somebody introduced it to the Americas because they liked it they had read about starlings mentioned in Shakespeare. They had this idea of, well, let's bring some to the North American continent. Turned out to be a very bad move in terms of the ecosystem, because while they are beautiful birds, and you see them all over campus, you see them flying in big synchronized patterns all the time up and down the state, they do displace the songbirds in our area. Their strategy for survival is actually very clever. They'll lay their eggs in an established nest. Their eggs tend to hatch first, and another bird will come on in and take care of the starling hatchlings at the expense of their own. The point being, they do displace a lot of local species. We also talked a little bit in the notes, or we'll talk a little bit about, for example, eucalyptus trees. Again, introduced from Australia. Blue gum trees, they're called as well, but they've displaced a lot of the coastal pine, the redwoods, the giant sequoia even that did used to be around here. One of the leading causes of extinctions, which we'll get to in just a second over here, is invasive species coming into an area. The other main cause of extinction is habitat loss. And when we're talking about protecting our ecosystem, a brain pop that we saw in 2 of the classes today, but I decided not to show it in the rest of them because I really wanted to wrap up the part with The Biggest Little Farm, is about extinction. Try and make the point with the students that from the time they come into this classroom, on an average class, say about an hour, to the time they leave, at least one species, probably several, will have gone extinct. Now, species extinction is a natural part of evolution. However, currently we are experiencing much more rapid species extinction than you would naturally see on Earth. The only time you get really huge extinctions like this that we're seeing right now, we're living through the 6th extinction, is when you have giant volcanic fields open up, asteroids impacting, sometimes a combination of both, which is probably what did in the dinosaurs about 65 million years ago. So one of the keys to this class is talking about the ecosystem, how it's interconnected, and one of the things that John wraps up with in The Biggest Little Farm. Again, I cannot say enough good things about this movie. If you want to watch it on your own, it is out there. I use personally, I use Prime Video just to see it because I really wanted to share the part where the Farmer John, talks about bringing back in the microorganisms to the soil. In the back of the room right now, I've got a big fish tank back there where we just now are going to start growing some microorganisms. We let them go for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then we get to check them out in our microscopes, which are all set up around the room. So the students have been watching me set up stations around the room for the microorganism observations. Hope you like those. Those will be coming up in about a week and a half once the microorganisms get really going. These are the questions that were right from yesterday. So they're the same ones. I put them in cursive up here because they were up there twice. One was, how did the cover crops help out? This, again, cycles back to what we saw about the poor land management that they did during the Dust Bowl days. The cover crops help sequester a lot of the rain that fell on their farm. California, especially lately, is in kind of a feast or famine when it comes to rainfall. We either have too much or too little. especially with the climate variability because of global climate change. We see much greater swings in our climate where you have much drier dry periods, much wetter wet periods. And that's one of the things that they did a fantastic job on in the Biggest Little Farm, is sequestering the water by having cover crops. And if you look at an example of this, now the science is still in the works on this one right here, but a quick example of how something like a predator, like a coyote, in this case a wolf, on the board right here, can actually help trees, was wolves being reintroduced to the Yellowstone area. Wolves were hunted to the extinction in that local area. They were recently reintroduced, and it caused a lot of controversy. I know someone personally who was very much against, because she had land up there, very much against the reintroduction of wolves. But it turns out, it looks like, as the wolves come back in, the elk, which generally graze in places where they are protected from the wolves, they would generally stay within the aspen groves, were braver about coming out and grazing all over the place. That caused the elk to eat the little aspen shoots that were coming up, and the elk weren't worried about getting eaten by wolves. As soon as you eat the aspen shoots, well, all of a sudden now you're going to start reducing the number of trees that are growing in the area, not just aspens, but other trees as well. Once they reintroduced the wolves, the elk, once again, got a little bit more wary about being in the wide open spaces like that, and they were, again, grazing in the groves. Now, again, the scientists are still checking this out. This isn't all cut and dried, but it looks like this is helping out the aspen trees because now the shoots have a chance to get growing. So you're talking about a predator, like a wolf, that eats nothing but meat, but yet it is helping out the forest regeneration in a place like Yellowstone. Again, going all year at the idea of everything being interconnected. We're looking at the 6 kingdoms of life, looking at soil, looking at the way things are interconnected within the ecosystem, and how you need all those 6 kingdoms working together to have a thriving ecosystem. And again, like the theme was for the whole week, bringing the food from a crop all the way to your table. It's an absolutely astonishing process. And so when we are sitting down to your next meal, I'd like you to really think, hey, where does that come from? That's where I'm going to leave it today. I'll put the notes up there as well, and I'll type them up since I've got a couple extra days here. You have a nice 4-day weekend. We've got a couple of extra days to type it up and make sure they're all laid out for you. Please don't forget, you've got an optional extra credit sitting out there. It's actually due Tuesday, not Monday. Obviously, we have no school on Monday. So it's due Tuesday. And then finally, the week 8 quiz is out there online. Be there with your open notes and take that and get it in by no later than Saturday night. Take care and have yourself a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.